All right, welcome everybody. Welcome back to the next edition of The Collective. My name is LaRon Henderson. I'm here today with a special guest. Her name is Gwen Williams. Gwen and I have been in relationship for many, many years and very exciting. So I'm going to say good morning, Gwen.
Good morning, LaRon. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Yeah.
As I have said many times, if you want to know more about Collective for Youth, you can go to our website at www.collectiveforyouth.org. So if you want more information, go there. But today is exciting because we are going to be talking about the future of youth development. Now, Gwen, before we get started, let's hear your story. You know, we used to work together. You used to live in Omaha.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're like the Jeffersons. You moved on up to California to a little bit more sunny. So tell us what's going on with you. What are you doing right now?
So that's easy. So I'm still doing the same type of work that I've been doing. I haven't seen the landscape across the country change very much, except for when it came to, the epidemic, the pandemic has been going on and it's been affecting people across the country the same way. And so I'm still advocating for youth. I'm still advocating for out of school time folks. I'm still advocating for making sure that we have all the right things that are needed for people to be successful, because the people are the ones that are on the ground. They're the ones that are working with the kids every day. So we need to take care of those people. And what does that look like? And so I've been just pondering over this last couple of years, what does that look like? How can we move forward? And then just it almost seems like we had two pandemics. So one for, health, and then one on just people of color. And so I've been talking to folks across the country about that as well. So that's what I've been doing.
Okay. So we're going to get into a little bit of that today. But I think it's fascinating that, 10, 12 years out, I still remember when we first met. I remember walking in as a after school provider to Morton Middle School, and ran a program for many years called Real Talk. Real Talk.
Love it.
I think the kids love Real Talk. Folks love Real Talk. We were grooving, and then I had to make some changes. And so I was kind of training someone to come on, and they were coming into your program and they were not doing necessarily the job that I was doing. I'm not saying I was the best, but I was pretty good. And you and I had a library, the only two people in the library conversation. You remember that?
I do, because I felt some kind of way about you. Like, first of all, just sending this other person in that doesn't know the kids. And I'm real adamant about making sure that the experience that the youth have is the highest quality. And then I assumed that because of the feedback that the kids were giving me, that you were that high quality. And then you're going to come in and send somebody else. I wasn't having that. You're out of your mind. No way. I'm like, no, my kids need the highest quality. Don't send a substitute or less quality into my kids. No, my kids deserve the best, like at all times. And then when you came in and you wanted to do something else, I said, man, I'll let you have it. I'm just like, out of your mind. Listen, you and I have had some arguments before. They get loud and they get people are like, what the heck is going on over there? But it's all out of love. Anytime that I give pushback, it's from a place of love for the kids that I'm serving, love for the work that I do. And I always want it to be highest quality. And that's when. So after that, when I saw you there and you were moving on and you were going to do your whole teaching thing, and I said, I understood that. And I said, I think the kids there at that school needed you just as much as the kids that I was serving did. And there's just not enough Black males in education to go around. And that's a whole different topic. Yeah. But then when we saw each other again, we were still doing, youth development and education. You were in the school side, and I was on the intermediary side, and I saw you and I'm like, there it is. That's the connect. That's what we need back over here on this side. So I
Yeah.
came at you with like both barrels. I'm like, hey, what are you doing? Where you at? I'm like, you need to come over here and stop playing. You play too much. So
Yeah. Well, I think you bring a good point up, because you and I are great examples of how to evolve in youth development. Not staying in one particular area, but always finding ways to either educate ourselves, go to trainings, be around people who are going to encourage us, or being in the right environment.
right.
And so today's topic of the future, what we feel is the future of youth development, I think is important, because many times it's easy to get trapped. And it's easy to get trapped in that, well, I've been a provider, or I've been working in after school for 10 years or 20 years, and that's all I know. And or I've been working in early childhood development, or as a teacher, or whatever it is. And understanding that those skills that, let me take that back. Understanding that kids are going to continue to develop and continue to grow and continue to change over the years. And if we don't do that, and if we don't move, now we're in trouble.
Absolutely.
And so looking at the landscape of after school, from, I don't know, we've been in the business for 20 years, a long time. From your experience, have you seen anything change? And have you seen, what changes have you seen in the last 20 years?
Yeah, so I would say that that's totally a loaded question. So
it is.
Yeah. So in some ways, there have been changes, and in some ways we've stayed the same. So I do agree with you. There are those people who will stay in a position for an exorbitant amount of time. But when they're doing that, they're not seeking out or gaining new skills as they go along. So they think that the skill set that they had when they first went into this position, whether it's teaching, whether it's after school, that those are the same skills that they're going to need 5, 10, 15, 20 years later. It's just not. So even when you think about education, you'll see those teachers inside the school buildings, especially the ones that were from years ago that never had a computer. Now OPS is requiring folks to like learn how to use their laptops and smart boards. Some people didn't survive that.
Right.
They're like, oh, no, I don't even know how to do that. And so then they're going to fade away, because then they become fossils. And I say, the longer we sit in something without getting new skills, we become fossilized.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And we know what we do with fossils, and we know what we do with dinosaurs. We go to museums because they're extinct and they don't work anymore. But it's also, it's really like, you go into a classroom and someone who's young, who has done some, or even if they're old, they've done some research, and they have a live classroom. Kids are learning, a lot of interaction, those things, but those are not, it's crickets. And it's like, well, we've just come to watch this old educator. I'm not going to call him a man or a woman. We've just seen this old educator try to teach these kids, and 9 times out of 10, there's a lot of chaos going on that has nothing to do with learning. It's behavior. It's behavior. And so, great point. So I guess, the list of questions that we have here is, what should or could out of school time or youth development, what should that look like in the future?
As far as the future goes, it needs to look like more youth voice. The youth that we have today, they are being marketed to on a regular basis. They are making decisions about their everyday life that affect their future. We need to be on the side of them, where we have that partnership between us and the youth, where we have that open communication, that open dialogue. But if we don't, then it sounds more of like us just talking at them instead of really engaging them in their own futures. And so I caution us to just make sure that we're not like falling back and still becoming that fossilized individual, even in youth development. And so making sure that we have to get more education. We need more education. We need to have more skills. I was in Europe And in Europe, when you travel in the subway, they're called the tubes. They tell you on the thing is like a loud announcement. It's called mind the gap. Now, if we're not over here minding our gap, minding that gap between us and the youth and how they're being developed now, and we're not creating skill sets to meet that, that gap becomes like from this to this, right? And so we're not really minding the gap. So making sure that we're taking the time to mind that gap and filling ourselves with new education, with new research, with new youth voice, and making sure that they're involved on every level. Yeah. And so if we look at the youth development, what we should aspire to, we should aspire to having youth on every level of programming. So we need to have youth on the boards. So we need to have youth voice on the board, and we need to teach them what that looks like and how to be on a board. So when they become adults, they already have those skills, and so they're not fumbling. The reason why we don't even have as many Black people on boards is because they haven't had enough experience or practice before that. So making sure that if we're working with our youth, no matter who they are, they need to be working on skill sets that are going to help them develop as whole humans. We want to talk about, oh, well, let's have some fun. Let's do this. I'm all for fun. But we can have fun and teach skills at the same time. And I think people think that those two things are different.
Right, right.
So the future really looks like, really minding that gap.
Yeah, I like how you said minding the gap, because when it comes to that gap, there was a time in our history where there was relationship, and adults knew how to build respectful, mindful relationships with young people. Mm-hmm. Not that they wanted to be their friend, anything like that. Right. But I think minding that gap is getting back to that, hey, I am an elder. Hey, I am not an authority figure per se, but I have some authority to do X, Y, and Z, so that I am able to, there's the old, you may have heard the saying of, you have to earn the right to be heard.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Many times earning the right to be heard, kids want to listen to you. You may have some great information, and that you may want them to be on the board. They may want to be on the board, but the way that you're presenting it to them, they've tuned you out.
Right.
They've tuned you out. You are irrelevant to them, and they're going to go find another way to do things. So minding that gap is, one, what you said, but two, us learning how to really mind the gap by building relationships, by not even reaching them where they are, because sometimes when people say, I just want to reach you where you are, I just want to meet you where you're at, that can be very condescending, because that means I may be a little bit higher than you. Right. And I gotta come down to your level to talk to you like I know what. No, I think some of the greatest learning experience I have had while I was in the classroom was from kids, not from a book. The kids taught me a bunch of things. So,
right.
I guess aspiring to, you talked a little bit about diversity. You talked a little, the word you use was Black people.
I do. I'm Black people.
I guess when in the world that we live in, we've been, in a sense, fighting this battle. We've been fighting this battle of diversity and equity and all these different things for a very long time. So if we're going to change youth development, I agree with youth voice, but how do we bring a healthy level of diversity, unity, all those different things, cultural stuff into the future? What should our, in your opinion, what should our focus be?
So our focus should be trying to have representation on every level, right? So representation matters. So when you see people of color in different positions, then if you can see that, then you can be that. But if you're not seeing that, then how are you going to think that you can aspire to something that you've never seen? So that's just something that somebody else does. So we want to talk about, making sure that, the kids that we work with, especially if they're coming from impoverished neighborhoods, how do we really move them past that generational poverty? But we have to show them something different then. We have to make sure that they are engaged on a level where they are being taught and being engaged with, when they are really learning, that it's that metacognition. How do we know what we know? Really thinking about how they think, how they process their thought, really is what's going to get us over that hump. And so when I go into spaces, sometimes I go in and I'm just like, well, I don't know that I can't say X, Y, or Z. Especially when I've noticed that I'm traveling other countries, in other places, and where the Black people are more like, well, no, we need just to stay in our place. Well, whose place is that? Like, who told you need to stay in that place?
Right, right.
So I was taught, coming up, that I can be anywhere, that I should be anywhere, and that was okay. And so that is the thing that I think we need to be teaching people, is really where did you get that thought process from? Where did you get that thought process from, that you need to be less than somebody else because you wear the skin that you're in? Where you need to live in a certain part of neighborhood or certain part of the city because you live in the skin that you live in. That you can't have a college degree because you live in the skin you live in, because they're going to put up all these barriers for themselves. It's not that even like the world is putting up barriers. They're putting up barriers because of their thought process, because their thought process are old processes that have been taught to them and been shown to them over the years. So it's like, kind of like that thing that's going on in the back of your brain at all times. Those things, those negative self-images, those negative self-talk, that self-talk that we do with our, well, I can't do that, or I can't aspire to that. Well, why can't you? You can't do it now, but you may be able to do it later. Let's we get some training on that. Let's get some education. Let's talk about what you're passionate about.
Right.
And I think yeah.
It sounds like, I mean, as I'm listening to you talk, it sounds like you're talking about changing your mindset.
Yes.
And really, as you change, we've heard it many, many times, as you change your mind, you can change your life.
Yes.
And if you don't change your mind, so it really goes back to that personal development, that self-development, that how I see myself is how I see the world,
right. Not
how the world sees me. It's like, I see, as you're saying, I see myself as I don't have this, or I'm not enough. So right. I'm going to, someone told me years ago, when you walk into a room, you give the people inside that room the opportunity to either celebrate you or abuse you just by how you walk in.
Absolutely.
And we miss that whole, I think, the lack of understanding of who we are and what we do. It really keeps us ignorant. And I think for years, it hasn't been jail and it hasn't been lack of books. It's been, I just want to keep you ignorant so that you think and you do things out of your ignorance, not out of your knowledge. Right. And so that makes sense. So, wow. Well, how did I know? I'm just going to say this. How did I know that if you and I start talking about the future, that we would be, I don't know, we're probably 15, 20 minutes into it. We got we got 5 questions, so those folks listening may be saying like, okay, well, you have some questions. I'm not going to, I made the mistake and told you we have 5. We may not get to 5 today. We may not get to 5. We may not get to 5.
Listen, you're the one that gets me going on this stuff. So I don't even know why you ask me stuff. It's like charge me up anyway. So that's totally your fault all day.
I am pretty good at I'm not going to say instigating, but challenging. I'm just challenging. So, okay. Question number 2. I think we exhausted that. Question number 2. Out of school time has a long history of empowering youth and staff to be innovators. Mm-hmm. How do we do that moving forward? If we're going to continue after school, I mean, I think of Chance the Rapper.
Yeah.
Chance the Rapper started his career or got his juices flowing in Chicago at a library doing music. Mm-hmm. And now he's selling millions and millions of dollars of records and millions of records and so on and so forth. So if we're going to continue to do that, what does that look like? What does that look like in the future of empowering and encouraging young people and staff to do more than what they're doing, kind of live their dream? What do you think?
All right. Well, first let's kind of walk back through history. So what out of school time is infamous for doing is raising up those people that have made it, right? So they want to use that as the shiny, bright star. Look, this person can make it. Yeah. And so if they can, you can. But then if those people become the poster board for that, And then, but they don't have a blueprint on how you can get there. They show them that, but then they're not talking to them about that blueprint and how they got there.
Okay, I agree with that, but I just want to add that happens in everything.
Yeah, no,
That's not just out of school time, but it happens. It's happening on the internet now, or happening on social media. I have 550 million views, but they don't tell the story.
Right.
They don't tell us. It's like, boom, I'm here, but the work, the toil, the time that it took to get that education, nobody sees that. So they just think, I'm just going to quit my job. I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to start this YouTube account. I heard my son talking the other day. He said, well, I created a TikTok, Dad. I created a TikTok and I got 8 followers. I got 8 likes or 8 followers. He said, there was 100 people that looked at it. He said, I got to go do another video because I may get some more. I'm like, dude, really? This is
my son does the same thing. He's like, Mom, I did a TikTok. He's like, did you see it? I said, yeah, I saw it. I liked
it. Yeah. So talk more about the blueprint. Talk more about the blueprint.
All righty. So what I mean when I say that is there is a literal way that somebody got to where they were, right? But we don't have conversations with youth when we want them to be empowered about what that work looks like in between. So we have a thing where a lot of the adults that we work with, want that quick fix. They want to be able to say this one thing to a kid and that's going to turn them around. And I'm like, no, that conversation takes 50,000 times of telling them that same thing.
Right.
And so they don't get it. They're like, well, I already told them once. Yeah, you may have told them once, but now you need that 444,000 more times to do it,
Right.
And so those are the stories that we need to know about, that time it took for that kid to get there, those bumps in the road that happened, and then they still kept going is what we need to talk about. So if we want to talk about empowering youth, and we really want to have that conversation to empower youth, we need to talk about the whole story, not just that single story. So I was looking at a young lady, and she had written a book, and one of her points was that the single story can be dangerous. The single story only shows you one aspect of something. It doesn't show you the work behind that. It doesn't show you everything that you had to go through. It doesn't show you the bumps in the road that you had. All they see is a finished product. Now, finished product may have took 60 seconds, but 60 seconds is like 6 years of work to get that 60 seconds. And we don't talk about that 6 years. We just talk about the 60 seconds. So if we really want to talk about empowering youth, we really need to include that 6 years.
Right.
So then they know that, hey, I'm going to need more than just that TikTok, that YouTube, that I need to put in some education behind that. I need to put in some work behind that. And what does that look like? And who do I need on my team to make sure that I can get there? And people think that they're getting there by themselves. Oh, I'm self-made. You're not self-made. Nobody is self-made. No, everybody has somebody that believed in them, that pushed them, that said something encouraging to them. And it takes more than just one of us to do it.
Right. Yeah.
And so that encouragement, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the empowering piece doesn't always have to be positive.
Yeah.
I remember something that I heard a speaker talking, and he said, losing is a part of winning.
Yes.
Losing is a part of winning. And many times in the environments that we're in, we think that we just have to build kids up because of not what they're going through, but how we see them. Well, if we only tell them positive things, we're good. Mm-hmm. No, they need to hear the reality, but how you phrase that. Mm-hmm. If you're doing it with love, if you're doing, like you said at the beginning, if you're doing it with love, or you're doing it with a heart that I just want to see you grow. You may not like what I have to say. Mm-hmm. Now it changes everything. So moving forward, I hear you say blueprint. 2, I hear you say, let's tell full stories.
Yeah.
Let's tell full stories. And 3, let me mentor, or let you see the real me, because it's very easy, as we were talking about earlier, it's very easy for folks to see a perception of what you want to see. You're all cleaned up, you're shaven, and that's all they see. And it's like, this is who I am. If we're going to be authentic, I think moving forward, one of the keys is to be authentic with what you're trying to say, because during the pandemic, we have been able to see things that are real and things that are not real.
Right.
And the things that are real, they're lasting. The conversations being isolated for 18 months or whatever, however you feel about it, being isolated can put you in a box where, okay, this is who I am. Let me put some real clothes on. Let me put some makeup on. Let me do something. Mm-hmm. But that authenticity in the future, because kids are going to be able to, let me say it differently. There's no reason why a kid is not, or a young person is not going to be able to lead a agency or lead an organization or lead a movement more than an adult. But if we don't see them right now, we're in trouble. Right. So that blueprint, making a plan, being prepared, all those different things. Yeah. That's a whole nother podcast, a whole nother conversation to have about preparation.
But youth development talks about scaffolding, right? So we talk about scaffolding on one level, right? But we don't talk about scaffolding on the long level. Like, what does that scaffolding look like? So if we talk about scaffolding, so yeah, you want to build this building, but it doesn't talk about all the engineers that had to be behind the scenes, taking that education class, going to college to make sure that they actually knew how to even build a frame of this scaffold in the first place. It doesn't talk about all the trials and tribulations. You can look, I talk to kids that think that my life is perfect. Oh, Miss Williams, you're always, clean, you're always coming nice. And I said, hey, Miss, and you always have so much energy. And I tell them, first thing, Miss Williams gets tired, like tired. I'm tired, and I have to make sure that I have to do things that keep me inspired, that keep me engaged. If I came in here and said the same thing to the kids every single day, I'm getting bored, and my boredom will feed into them.
Yeah, so true, so true. I think we get a lot of that. I think we get a lot of. Yeah, we get a lot of that. That's all. I'll just keep it with that. We get a lot of that. All right, so. Thinking about the pandemic, thinking about what we've learned in the pandemic, what we haven't learned. What I know for sure is across the nation, some of the things that are going on in Omaha or Florida, they're happening across the country. And it's not just unique to a population. No, I think there's some things that we have taken for granted, or that we took for granted in out of school time. We've gone from latchkey to
that was our year.
Yeah, we were latchkey. I don't know what they were before that. They were doing something before that, and then now it's out of school time. It was babysitting, all those different things. Mm-hmm. So we've been able to look during the pandemic of where we are, gaps, different things. My question is, what do you feel, or what do we feel we have learned in the last couple of years because of the pandemic, and how can we use what we've learned to move forward in the next 5-10 years?
Well, for me, like the one thing that was shown a lot, that education needs reform straight up.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that? We hear that all the time. What do you mean by that?
Okay. See, I don't know where you're going. Okay, so yeah. All right, so let me make it smaller for you. So reform. So what it showed us that teachers are not the end all be all of educators in a child's life, first and foremost. That we need everybody to be educated in order to educate a child. So we think that if we just put them in the classroom that they're learning, that is not learning. That is just sticking them in the classroom. We learned that teachers lack certain skills. So we saw some skill gaps when they had to go virtual, right? We saw some skill gaps, and I'm just like, and those showed up like, woo! I'm like, wow. So we saw some skill gaps show up. Then we also saw some management skill gaps as well. So how do we deal with discipline and structure when you can't control everything in a single, how big is a room? 8 by 8, 10 by 10? So, right. So when you can't control that.
It's not 8 by 8. That's like a jail cell. It's bigger than that.
Okay, listen.
It's big.
I was in your classroom. It didn't look that big when I came in your classroom. I'm like, oh, okay. They took
10
one
by
classroom
10.
and they had that partition in the middle. So your class,
Yeah.
I'm just saying. Don't even get me started. All right. So anyway, so when they couldn't control that environment, their skill gaps showed up. You know, the engagement level showed up. So now you can't control whether that kid is sitting there being quiet. It's all about what skills do you have to engage them on that next level. So that to me showed up. So we talk about reform. Let's talk about do the teachers that are working with the kids.
I mean, school day teachers and after school teachers, do they have the skills to
Emotional skills successful in times of stress for them, right? So they talked about how tired they were, how this was really hard, and they didn't know how to emotionally deal with that. And so no one really addressed that. We're just gonna bump over that. Yeah, we heard you. We heard you. Okay, but we're not gonna really do anything about it. We're just gonna try to see if we can put a couple band-aids on that and see if we can get over that until we can get them back in the classroom. Right. We're not gonna talk about this thing that's really what's going on. You know, those social emotional skills that the adults need to have. So right. When you're frustrated, you don't always just go off. We need to examine our own self first. So if a kid is acting a certain way, does that adult have the wherewithal to give themselves a moment before we respond as an adult? Because we're going to have some emotions around whatever that kid is saying or doing. But do we check ourselves first before we speak, or do we just speak out of emotions because we don't have the skill set to pause, like we're right. asking them to do? So we ask them to do stuff that we're not doing.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So that showed up for me all day, like across the country. I saw all these YouTube videos of teachers and like people just, when I say physically crying, I mean crying.
Yeah.
Like they were devastated by the whole pandemic and having to teach in a different way that they weren't accustomed to.
Right. Right. I agree with what you said. I would add the pandemic exposed the lack of self-care as well, of taking care, because now I'm not able to go out on a Friday to talk, you know, to the bar, to wherever, to talk about the kids, or I'm not able to release. And so my life is really at the school, and it's not healthy. And so now I have to find a different outlet to make that happen. And then two, I would agree with you with just the learning, not the technology, but how kids learn. Mm-hmm. I'll say it this way: the variety of ways that kids learn in a classroom. If I just talk to them, they're going to learn. But now I can't touch you; they can't touch each other. I got to monitor all those different things. Mm-hmm. Changed everything, because now I went from being a lecturer to now I have to, in a sense, I got to be an entertainer, and I got to get kids' attention. Right. And before, I didn't have to get kids' attention. I could just tell them what to do and leave them alone. Right. Now I have to have, as I would call, now I have to have something in my backpack. Mm-hmm. I got to have additional story. I got to have additional technology, because you can't just blame, well, the kid's not paying attention because it's online and it's boring.
Right. No, really not. It's straight up turning their cameras off on folks.
Yeah. I'm going to turn my camera off because you didn't have my attention when we were in the classroom. Right. And now we're out of the classroom. I think that exposed some things, but the big thing, it exposed how we take care of ourselves and how we take care of each other.
Absolutely.
Because there's not I haven't done any research, but I can only imagine the psychiatrists or the therapy bills that have happened now during this pandemic. Right. And the trauma that we always talk about, the trauma that the kids have gone through, but the trauma that the teachers have gone through. I'm not in a support group for teachers, right? Because or a support group for out of school time folks. Yeah. But I'm sure there was a bunch of things that went up. You know, I know if I want to say, you know, some of the habits the folks had, they had to do it inside their house. So instead of me drink, I'm I'm having a social hour. I'm doing, what it's CBD, whatever it is that they're doing. I can only imagine. So I think moving forward, as in the next couple of years, we're going to see some data that comes out that's going to see, as we talk about in Omaha, and I know you guys talk about in Florida, but that the pyramid,
Yes.
that safe, supportive, interactive, engaging, all those different things, that safe and supportive area. How do we deal with that? But how do we deal with this, like you said, the social and emotional skills, not for kids, but those social and emotional skills for teachers?
Yeah.
How do we deal with that? That's not a we had a conversation recently. I was talking to a professional, and they were talking about the ruler, and they were getting ready to go to a ruler training. I'm like, ruler's great, but I believe the acronym ruler is great, but when you look at that, how did our parents teach us ruler? How did they recognize a behavior or recognize an emotion? How did they understand all those different things? It's like, I didn't have a ruler. I didn't have a ruler growing up. My parents didn't have a ruler growing up. It's social skills. How do you deal with people? How do you treat people like you want to be treated? All those different things. So, I'm excited to see the data. What's going to happen with the data, and maybe some of the data that's out right now, but it may be too early to see we can see some of the things that are just happening on the surface. But the learning gap, are we
the disengagement?
The disengagement. Are we using technology now in a better way to deal with that learning gap? And it's not just send a kid to school, send a kid to the principal's office. You can't do that now. Now you got to talk.
Office. Like, I don't even believe people should go to the principal's office anymore. I'm like, let's restore. So I've been reading a lot about restorative practices, right? And so when I'm reading about restorative practices, it's really talking about, so when we send kids out, we're telling them, one, that they cannot be here. Two, so they're feeling a sense of, just not feeling like they belong, right? So they don't belong in this classroom because you're kicking me out. Then we invite them back into the classroom, but then what does that look like? So does it look like, because I've heard teachers straight up, and I mean, this is school day, this is after school, this is all, don't come in here with that mess.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, okay, so if you know that you don't belong, and then when you're coming back in, you straight up already, how does that make a kid feel? We don't talk about really that healing process that needs to take place when a child gets put out, and then how we welcome them back in to make them feel like they are part of the group instead of being just automatically, don't come in here with that mess.
Well, I mean, I guess where, I don't want to get off on a trail, but where does that come from? What culture, what society, where does that come from of don't come in here with that mess. I can't stand you. You got to leave. Get out of my house. Get out of my classroom. All those different things. That's not something that is normal.
No,
that's not something that a lot of people hear. But I think it's common. I mean, it's a common attitude. Well, I'm just going to delete you, or I'm just going to. Where does that come? In your opinion, Gwen, don't get off on a tangent. Don't get off on a tangent. But where does that mindset come from, in your opinion?
So, in my opinion, that mindset has kind of developed throughout history. Like, I was never told that growing up. Oh no, we're just going to be in this together. So, and back in the day, everybody, the community could discipline. So you heard the reasons why. And actually for me, I think it comes down to the value system, and the value of a family, because I knew growing up that I'm not going to disrespect my mom outside this house. That's just something you don't do. I'm not going to disrespect my dad outside this house. I valued our family name more than that, because I already knew, aren't you such and such's daughter? Oh Lord, here we go.
Yeah.
So, so if you really go back, like those are the types of things that I heard growing up. Now moving forward, you don't hear that as much. So we have made it okay to, that whole era where, you could drop your kid off at the police station or the firehouse. Come
Yeah.
on. Who made that stuff up? Because
Oh yeah.
I mean, that should not have been a thing, where you can just, if you can't handle it, you just gotta drop your kid off. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like back in the day when we lived in the country. If you didn't want to deal with your dog anymore, you just took him to the country and let him out.
Right.
And then some farm community some farm town or farmhouse would take the dog. You just can't drop kids off. But I think that is a common thread. There's I'm just going to throw you away, or you don't fit into this particular box. So now I don't need you anymore.
Right.
Or you don't. I think, we could get off on a tangent with education. There was a time when there was only a certain amount of kids, or a certain type of kid was supposed to be educated. Depending on what book you read, the classroom is still geared towards females. Yeah. Predominantly female teachers. The learning style with females. So you would succeed. You would succeed. You succeed. You had a great school experience. Me, my learning style is a little bit different. I was getting kicked out of class. I didn't necessarily want to come to school because it was like, well, now you're putting me in this prison and I don't learn that way, but let's watch a movie. And then let me tell you about the movie. But that's tough. So we stayed on that. I got one more question for you before we got to get out of here. Okay. How do we ensure? You
gotta rub your whole face when you say,
because this when I think of the youth, when I think of the future of youth development, this is it. Because I think this question we talked about years ago, still relevant. How do we ensure youth are whole, healthy, and ready to learn? I think that's a big one. And so let's speak on just a little bit. How do we ensure in youth development, out of school time, in the world that we live in, how do we ensure that youth are whole, one, healthy, two, mentally, physically, spiritually, all that stuff, and ready to learn? How do we do that?
Yeah. Well, it's a complex question, but I am going to have to always go back to the adults. The adults that are around the youth are not whole or healthy. Okay. So we do have those people that are out there, and they can't give something they don't have.
Right.
That's the bottom line. If you are struggling and you know that you're struggling, you need to get whole first as the adult before you even aspire to have the kids be whole and healthy. And then if not, so, it's going to sound crazy, but then there's not enough, there's never enough resources to put into something like that. For some reason, we think that the people that we put in front of the kids are less valuable than the kids we serve. Okay. So we're not spending enough time teaching them how to be whole, how to be healthy. You talked earlier about that self-care. We have a lot of people who don't even know how to say no, who just go and go and go till they have nothing left to give. And then by the time they get to after school, then now they're just barking at kids because they have nothing left.
So true.
Like physically.
So true.
Nothing left. So all they're getting are the scraps.
Right.
And so that's the thing for me that needs to be addressed. But if you have whole individuals that are working with you, then we just need to instill in them what you have, show them how you got there, talk to them, have conversations. We talk about, the kids, in order to be whole and healthy, they just need to do their homework. They need to do this. They need to get this done. But are we having conversations about what that looks like?
Right.
I say homework time even should look different. So homework time should not be just always quiet. First, we need to have conversation first. So first of all, we need to have that welcoming environment. Let's talk about what's on our plate. I'll share with you what's on my plate. Let's talk to you about what's on your plate. Let's look at your week as a whole. Then let's set some goals around, okay, so if you have these 3 assignments that need to get done. So what realistically, so we know we have 40 minutes. What realistically can you get done in that 40 minutes? And then after that 40 minutes, let's have a conversation about that reflection. Okay, so you said your goal was to get these 3 things done. How did you do? How did you do? And so having those conversations, and we want to have those types of conversations about everything that we do. So when you look at your life, let's talk about, okay, so what is our goal, and then how are we going to get there? Let's have more conversations, because in those conversations, that's how kids learn. In those conversations, they hear that thought process. In those conversations, they hear how we make decisions, and how we make decisions could influence how they make decisions. So if I know that I'm a teacher and I'm living healthy and holy, I'm talking to them about that. I'm talking about the things that I do in my off time to make sure that I'm prepared for them. I'm talking about how I went to the gym because I needed to do that, or I talk about how I meditate or I took some yoga classes. So I'm having those conversations. We leave out a whole bunch of conversations that we're assuming that kids know.
I get it. I would agree with that. I think I can put it in a couple words, but wholeness. I agree with you when you said a person who's not whole can't give somebody else something that they don't have.
That's right.
So I think that starts with purpose. I think once I understand my assignment and understand purpose, everything changes. Now I know why I'm coming to work. I know why I'm in the classroom. And as a student, I think they need that too. Here's my assignment while I'm at work. The healthy piece, I really think that comes with a true vision and a true understanding of who you are as a person. I think many times we have an unhealthy vision of who we are, and we're really trying to be something that we're not. So I don't know who I am. I don't have a purpose. I'm trying to be something that I'm not. And now I'm not ready to learn because I'm so distracted by the little things, or I'm so distracted by life. Like you said, I have so much on my plate that I'm not able to juggle all those things. So school's not important, because school is not the way that I'm going to get to what I need to get to in the future. It's just something that I have to do because my parents said I need to do it. So that purpose, the assignment, and then really being ready. There has to be more to life than getting a good job or going to school to get a good job. So you can have a fun life. Sometimes it's I'm going to school so that I can get a good job, so that I can really be a good employee. And that innovative stuff that we talked about in the after school world, it's there, but we need to mold that in different things.
But that's what the whole education was set up for. The education system was set up so we would be good employees, because even when you think about, okay, so what job do you want? You could be, we had shop, we had, home ec, we had, math for those high level math people. So, they already started doing that. And so that's what we have to go against. And that's why I say that education needs to be reformed. We really need to talk to kids about what their purpose is and what they're passionate about, and how their purpose leads and how their passion leads to that purpose. And that purpose was create fulfilledness in their life. I talk about the difference between existing and living.
Oh yeah. That's a whole nother conversation.
That is.
Gwen, I do thank you. We could talk for another hour. We talked for a little bit. We could talk for another hour. I hope, for those of you listening, I hope this was beneficial to you. Like I said, I want to just thank Gwen Williams. She resides in Florida right now. What part of Florida?
So I'm right outside of Palm Springs, so West Palm Beach.
West Palm Beach. She does ride her bike. She does exercise a little bit.
A little bit. Especially during the pandemic. Gotta stay healthy.
Thank you so much. Like I said, without you, the collective is incomplete. So we'll see you all next week. Thank you all.